Hi everyone, it's Richard Winstone here with Over 50s Money, and I'm here today with Jamie Jones from Vida Estate Planning.
Hi.
Today I'm going to be asking Jamie about wills, trust, LPAs, the sort of estate planning things that him and his company do. He's going to give us a bit of background about himself and the company as well. If you do have any further questions that aren't covered in this video, please feel free to either reach out to us directly at support@over50smoney.com, or if you'd like to ask Jamie directly, because what I'm going to do is pass your emails on to him anyway, you can give him a call on the phone number that's listed in the description below the video. So good morning, Jamie. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you for having me. Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
Thank you.
So if we just dive straight into this, could you tell us all a little bit about yourself and Vida Estate Planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like I say, thanks for having me. So Vida Estate Planning. First of all, I'm Jamie Jones. I'm the director of the company. We set up Vida as a small family-run company because we felt that certainly the will advice that's out there at the second can be quite simple and basic, and effectively there's not necessarily a personal service. Certainly where the internet's concerned, and certainly if you consider that what's happened over the last few years, people are getting far more off of working online. They don't necessarily
Yeah.
want people coming to their houses. It's not always as easy to get in to see solicitors, etc., etc. So we felt that we wanted to offer something slightly different. There are many companies out there that offer a service where you just go online, fill a form out, and then you receive an email with a will attached. And what we find is that that doesn't really cover certain areas as such where people have either questions or they don't know what, say, for example, an executor does, or even what a beneficiary might get, or what even simple things like funerals or flower arrangements, bits and pieces like that.
Mm.
So the way we decided as Vida was to more go down a route of trying to make that more of a personal service, even though we wanted to try and keep our costs as competitive as possible. We felt that it was important to know our client, and therefore what we do is we will contact the client to have a chat with them. That can be a 10-minute chat, it could be an hour chat, whatever that decides, how complex the estate may be. And it's really just so that at the end of the process, we can advise the client on what we feel is the best way of them to protect their estate going forward. And that's why we went down this route of deciding we do it all over the internet, or we can do it over phone, because of the personal service as opposed to just an email service.
Okay,
Now,
I think that kind of makes a lot of sense. Like, wills are very personal things, probably one of the most personal things you're going to do in later life.
yes.
To be honest, hearing it, so much of it is done online with just a form sounds quite intimidating to me. I think I'd much rather talk to a person and know what I'm getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the key, isn't it? I think we all go through things. I guess it's a little bit like, say, for example, getting a mortgage.
Mm.
When you go to get a mortgage, you effectively will go and speak to somebody to understand what your options are, what else you can do, what are the best rates, what insurances you need to organize, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's very rare that we'll just fill a form in and hope for the best. And it's the same with a will. Wills are quite complicated in the sense that they're effectively instructions to your people that administer your estate as to how those assets will be split up and where they're going to go to. But
Mm.
in lots of situations, it's not as straightforward. The first one that will come to mind, for example, is if you are living with a partner. If you don't have a will, then effectively that money won't go. Now, it may not even go to that partner. It may just go to children or family, etc. So it's just simple advice like that we just want to make sure people do understand exactly what they're getting into and why they're doing a will, and also the repercussions of having just sort of a standard will in place, and what the limitations may well be on that. I kind of want just to give a bit of background on me, if that's okay as well,
Yeah,
Richard.
of course, please do.
So my background is I've been in the specific will writing industry for the last 6 years, and as you can well imagine, done an awful lot of wills and advised on lots and lots of
Yeah.
areas. So, and the knowledge base has grown and grown and grown, and I also have to do regular compliance and regular training to ensure that I'm adhering to the member code of who we work through, which is a company called Countrywide Tax and Trust Corporation.
Okay.
Now, before that, I was a financial advisor. So whilst I was specialising particularly in the mortgage industry, funnily enough, I do have a background within financial services. I understand investments, ISAs, etc. So that kind of gives me a very good insight as to understanding people's estates, understanding what the issues are, what the areas of concern may be, and also making sure that I'm understanding everything that this person is saying to me and what they need to do.
Yeah, okay, that gives you a really comprehensive background into people's finances, which is, I can only imagine, makes your service, a lot more personal because you don't have to have someone else to explain it to you first.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. Thank you for the background there.
Okay.
Um, sorry, what was that company you said you worked through?
So the company I work through at the second is a company called Countrywide Tax and Trust Corporation.
Okay,
So
and they sort of give you some sort of regulations to keep your company regulated.
absolutely, yes. So I have to adhere to a member code with them. So they look out for any the work that I'm doing. They will also effectively provide any sort of software and hardware that I need, and any
Oh,
training and support. And as with anything in life, Richard, we cannot possibly know everything. So
no.
there will always be sometimes where someone will come to me with something and I'm like, well, that's a little bit different. And the joy of having Countrywide Tax and Trust behind me is that they've been around for hundreds of years and
Wow.
understand trusts, wills, and lots of other areas, and have expertise in different sort of areas as such. So what I can do is can go to them and make sure I'm getting support. But like you say, most importantly, they do give me a compliance code and way that we
Yeah.
have to adhere to.
I think for us over 50s, mate, that's one of the reasons we like you as a partner. It's one of the things we look for when we select partners. We'd like to know that there's a regulatory body in the background that offer our
Yes.
community a bit of extra protection, just that extra layer of protection.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be needed, but it's nice to know it's there. So yeah, so I
Yeah.
just wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. And I guess one other point to bring in there is which is not necessarily massively, but as part of it as well, we do have £2 million worth of professional indemnity insurance.
okay, that's always, yeah, again, good to have and good to know that it's there in the background should it ever be needed, which
Yes.
presumably not, but yeah,
Fingers
absolutely.
crossed, eh?
So sorry, you were mentioning trusts quite a bit. Now, I've obviously spoken to you about trust a few times before, and I'm not going to lie, I still haven't fully wrapped my head around what is a trust, what are the different types of trusts, and why
Yeah.
would someone need one? So those are the questions I'm going to ask you to explain to our audience, please.
Okay, so I'll try and keep it short and sweet, and obviously everybody's individual situation can be different, and to why a benefit of a trust will be there. Um,
Yeah.
probably the first thing to start with really is to talk about wills and what they do and what they don't do, and then
Okay.
that will help us to I kind of explain where the trust comes in. So
Hmm.
a simple will is a simple will. So when you die, effectively, your assets get passed to who the people are that you want to leave them to. So, let's say you've got a married couple with two children. Um, Mr. dies first, his estate gets passed to his wife,
Okay.
and then the wife dies, and the estate then gets passed to the children. And what happens is with a will, it's called the assets are passed absolutely. So that means that those assets are passed directly to that beneficiary, and that then forms part of their estate, their own estate, and they own those assets absolutely, and they can do as they choose with them.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And it's the same thing, obviously, then goes to the children, it becomes part of their estate, and they own those assets absolutely. Now, that's brilliant, and that's often what people want. And
Hmm.
that's a very simple will. You name your executors, you name your beneficiaries, and that's it.
Okay.
When the problems start really is if we start with first death, for example. So on the death of, say, Mr., all the assets pass to his wife in this scenario. So what would happen is, let's say the value of the estate is 500,000, that goes straight to the wife, no problem, that's what they wanted. The
Yeah.
problem then comes potentially, for example, what can happen is, certainly if it's an earlier death, those assets, then someone could get remarried. So in this scenario, the wife goes away, she meets somebody else, and then she remarries to that person.
Hmm.
Now, what happens then is their estates all become one. So that new person and the ladies, their estates are all new. If she then dies, all that estate will then go to the new partner or the new husband.
Okay, so the person on the first death, their children wouldn't then get what was their estate. It's gone to the new partner, some person he'd never met.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. And I suppose
Yeah.
that's where trust comes in, because that's definitely not something many people would want.
Exactly, and that's what most people wouldn't want to do. They want to make sure that at least, the ultimate beneficiaries, which are generally the children,
Mm.
or any other beneficiary, but let's go with the children in this scenario, which is a lot of reasons why people kind of make sure they want to be protected, effectively could completely miss out on inheritance, and it happens very often.
Okay.
Um, I've had people phoning me up when they've had problems from 8 years in the past, and someone has then later died, and unfortunately there was nothing they could do because the will effectively just gave everything to the next person. So, and it cuts out. Whereas you're absolutely right. What in this scenario again, if Mr. had died and his half of the estate went into trust, it is then protected. Whilst the wife that survives, she can still access the money, do as she pleases, spend it as she pleases, and even bring somebody else into the family home and remarry. That's not a problem. But on her death, what happens is the half that is under trust will go to the ultimate beneficiaries, which are the children.
Okay. Okay, that makes
Okay.
sense. So it allows you to have sort of a second layer of protection on your estate.
Yes, absolutely. So it just makes sure that that money's sort of ring fenced. Really, you've kind of said, well, on my death, I want it to go to my wife, but ultimately, I want to make sure my children end up with it. That's what the trust will do. It will make sure the
Looking
children
at
end
the
up.
end game more than just the next step.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's really interesting. Is that what all trusts do? Because I understand there are various different types of trusts, or are they just like small niche differences between them?
There's differences between all sorts of trusts. There's an awful lot of trust, Richard, out there. And what I'm specifically talking about is what we call a discretionary trust within your will.
Okay.
Um, okay, and because that is really the main trust that we will try and deal with, because that is the main areas of concerns for most. Now, there's many benefits to a discretionary trust, and whilst I say remarriage, it will also help protect the assets for people from external creditors, such as things like care fees. It can help avoid care fees, which again probably is another in-depth video, really. So again, if there's more questions
Okay.
around that, that would be something that would probably best requested.
Fair
Um,
enough.
yeah, and just assuring like the children. So ultimately, the children will end up with all the assets, which is great. The
Hmm.
problem is if your children then get divorced later in life themselves, that money is available to their ex-spouses.
Oh, wow, it does get complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Can a trust help avoid that situation, that scenario?
absolutely. If the money is passed to the children in trust, that money's theirs to do effectively still as they please, but effectively the trust looks after the money, and therefore no one else can touch that money. So ex-spouses cannot take that money, and
Oh, okay.
it keeps it within the family bloodline. So
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you.
it's
And
okay.
as Joey said, sorry for the audience. If you do want like a second video on trust and the different types, just email into us or give us a call, and we'll obviously get about to creating that video. Thanks,
Yeah, and
Jamie.
yeah, absolutely, Richard. And I think there are, like I said, there's an awful lot of trust. There's business trust, agricultural trust, life assurance trust, business trust. The list goes on. I think the main two that people would certainly discuss around wills are the discretionary trust within a will, and
Mhm.
also what we would call a probate preservation trust, a PPT, often called what they call a lifetime trust, which is when you put assets, specifically a property that you live in, into trust whilst you are alive. Um, and
Okay.
the main reason that is done is to ensure that as you get older, that the property could not be sold off to pay for your care. Um,
Oh, okay.
that's a big area, and again, it is more of a complicated, in-depth trust. I've touched on it now to kind of highlight that it's available, but
Yeah.
again, I think that is where we say that's a kind of real specific call to have with somebody to go. It may not be suitable. It may be just better just to have a simple trust within your will than wrapping your whole property up right now.
Mm.
Um, and so
So you have
there
to do
are
that on a case by
differences.
case basis, I take it, and speak to
Absolutely, and
the customer.
this is where the advice comes in for me. It's important that the people understand what their options are. It's a bit like having a medical operation. You want to know what your options are and what you can do and what you can't do. And that's what we try and offer, is to make sure you're well aware, and then effectively that decision is yours to make.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be quite difficult to get that sort of information just filling in a form online. So I can see why the personal touch may be a little bit more necessary,
Yes.
since like there's a lot of niches and complications involved in that
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. I think that covers trust. At least I think I've got my head around it now enough to be able to write about it.
Excellent.
The other service you offer are LPAs.
Yes, lasting powers of attorney.
Exactly. I understand there are two different LPAs. Could you just explain what the two LPAs are? It's like a brief overview, and why someone might want one or both of them.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, they're quite simple in the sense of what they are. So there's two types. There's what we call the financial affairs lasting power of attorney, and a health and welfare lasting power of attorney. So they're pretty much as they say on the tin, really. A financial affairs is effectively, if you lose capacity, as in mental capacity, then effectively what the lasting power of attorney for financial affairs does is allows somebody or people, how many attorneys you want to name, to look after your affairs, to manage your money for you. And to effectively, be able to pay your bills, pay your mortgage, pay your rent, give you food, and maybe you can access services, etc., etc. You need someone to effectively look after your money. And the reason being is, if you lose mental capacity, effectively, once everybody is aware of that, then everything gets stopped. No one can access your finances, your monies. They cannot even talk to the water company or the electricity company. You're just not allowed to, because obviously you are the person they want to deal with. And if there's no power of attorney in place, it just gets stopped. And then what happens is you have to go to what we call the Office of the Public Guardian. You have to go to the courts to get a deputyship put in place, that someone will look over everything. And that can go on for months and months and months.
It sounds convoluted. So if the power of attorney isn't in place before capacity is lost, it's a long process to get that sort of power of attorney. Okay, which conversely, or the other side of that coin is, when a power of attorney is put in place, or a lasting power of attorney is put in place, it doesn't have immediate effect. It only comes into effect when a person loses capacity. Is that what you say?
Well, no. So we would always recommend that you put the power of attorney in place immediately, because whilst you can have a power of attorney and you can register it, you don't have to register. You don't have to start it immediately, effectively. But the joy is, we would always recommend that you do, because you don't know when you're going to lose capacity, and if you've got it in place already, then if something does happen, there is no need to sort of wait the time limit of having to register it. Certainly, if you're dealing with a government body, it can take time to register and notify the people. You're better off registering it immediately and having it in place straight away. And that way, then once something happens to somebody, the attorneys can take over the running of the estate immediately, and there isn't a delay. And the other thing to bear in mind, certainly where financial affairs one is concerned, is you can also use that to manage your affairs if you're not about. So, for example, it could be that some people like to spend a few months of the year in somewhere like Spain or another country in the world, but they have assets within the UK and they want someone to look after them. So the power of attorney can allow that to happen. That allows somebody else to look after your finances whilst you travel, and somebody that you trust. So
it gives you a bit more freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one other real key point here, Richard, is that it's kind of assumed that if you're married, that your spouse effectively has automatic rights over anything with your name on, and that is not the case. So if you're married and you lose capacity, your spouse effectively cannot access any of your finances. And if you're the main named person on any bills, they can't do anything with it. So even spouses need powers of attorney.
Okay, that is a really interesting point. Thank you. I wouldn't have even thought to have asked that, because I would have assumed the spouse did have those privileges.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so the health one's the same as the finance one. It's just over your medical care. Is that right?
Effectively, yes. It's be able to somebody make decisions on your care, to, if you want, for example, switch the machine off if you're in a situation where it's a life or death situation, to be able to make those calls. And there was, funny enough, there was a little bit during the COVID situation and the pandemic, there was a situation where a lady, a family had a power of attorney in place for financial affairs only. And their nan was in a care home, and they didn't want the nan in the care home because they didn't think the treatment was correct, etc., etc. So they went and got the nan, brought her home, but because they did not have power of attorney in place for health and welfare, a couple of days later, the police turned up, social services turned up, and effectively dragged the nan back to the care home.
Really? That's horrible.
Yes. It's not great. And that is a unique situation. Let's not go down the fear route of that's going to happen to everybody. But things do happen, unfortunately, in life, and it's best just to be prepared for them than not, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fair enough. All right, thank you. I think that adequately explains lasting powers of attorney, and obviously,
Okay.
People can come to your website or give you a phone call to talk about their own personal situations a bit closer if they're interested in going down that route.
Yes.
So what's the best way for you personally for the over 50s money community to get in contact with you? Do you prefer us to send out your email address, your phone number? People just go directly to your website? Just how can people contact you? What's the best way?
Well, to be honest, Richard, all of those ways, as you said. So.
Okay, that's great, guys. I'm going to put all of those details in the description below.
Absolutely.
If you want to talk to Jamie, his email address, website, and phone number will be in the description.
Absolutely, yeah. We're an open company. As you can well imagine, we get busy, and we sometimes we can't always answer a phone because we're busy. We will always try, endeavour to, obviously.
Yeah.
And sometimes an email will take a couple of hours to get back to, but we will always talk to people, and we're always open. And if somebody just wants to have a quick chat or send an email asking a few questions, absolutely. And I think
that's great.
There's no charge just to have a chat with somebody. If someone wants to go ahead with the will, as you're going to say, no doubt there's discounts and bits and pieces, and they can do that. But if they want an initial chat or initial questions, however they want, phone call, email, whatever works for them.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. And yeah, as you said, I was going to mention to the audience at home, Jamie, Vida Estate Planning, and Over 50s Money are working together. We currently get exclusive discounts with Jamie at the moment. That'll be running until the 31st of March. The discounts are 85% off of wills, single and mirror. And then there's 15% off of trusts and 10% off of LPAs. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Jamie.
I think you're about right. You think you're about right.
To get access to those discounts, you have two options. You can call Jamie directly and say you're an Over 50s Money community member, and he'll know to apply the discount, or you can head to his website, the link's in the description, and the discount codes are below that link in the description. So you have to apply different codes for whether you're getting a will, an LPA, or a trust. There's also something Jamie calls the full Monty package, where you can get all of those, and there's 10% off of that as well. Again, the discount code is in the description below.
Perfect.
All right, well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this interview, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard.
Take up too much of your time.
Not at all, and it's been great fun. And obviously, it's and same as you, this is all a bit new for us on this. So
yeah,
it's been good fun. And like I say, if anyone's got any questions and if they want any more informative videos, just let us know.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to echo that. All of our contact details in the description, guys. You guys have obviously the support Over 50s Money email address and my personal one. Get in contact if you have any questions, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible.
Brilliant.
All right, well,
Thank you very
enjoy
much.
the rest of your day, Jamie. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers, up.